happens and it sells out again before you can get there, you can get it at susansokolblosser.com. So go out, get it online, but check out at the book sales right after the conference. Okay, I need everybody to quiet down. Please, the evaluations on each of our speakers are very, very important to us. I forgot to ask you after Susan's talk to make sure that you did your evaluation on her, on Gracious and Ruthless. I also ask, because you did not have those cards over this morning, if you would just do an evaluation on this morning's, you can title it Amy Ziering and Panel. And if you would do that at your desk or at your tables and get that done too. Then, so you've got actually 4 pieces of paper I'm going to ask for. One is on Susan, one is on this morning. Then we'll talk about this piece afterwards, and then you will also find a conference evaluation on your tables now. And that conference evaluation is how it's going to make next year's conference. Last year's conference evals made this year's, so this one's going to make next year's. Please, please, please fill those out, and as you depart, you can leave them. So I'm going to get off the stage, and we're going to get on with the show.
Good afternoon. My name is Emily Shasso, and I work in leadership development, which means I get to spend my days surrounded by the phenomenal women in leadership that make up St. Luke's health system. But it's my pleasure today to introduce our next speaker, who is Linda Davis. So Linda provides coaching to aspiring executives, to new leaders, as well as high-performing women and men. I had the opportunity to spend the last few days with Linda as she's been in Boise. I've been her host. And as a young leadership and development professional myself, I recognized that there was going to be an opportunity where I had Linda stuck in my Prius for 30 minutes on our way to an event. So I decided I was going to use this to really talk shop, right? It's not every day I get somebody in my car and I can ask them all the questions I can think of on leadership development. So there we are, just 2 gals talking L&D in my Prius, and something really remarkable happened that I think speaks to the authenticity that Linda brings to her work, which is that through our discussion of our shared profession, suddenly I realized that we're talking about me, right? My work and my goals and what holds me back and what do I want. And it really helped me to better understand Linda's passion for what she does. And through her work, so she's actually managed HP's Executive Summit with past CEO Carly Fiorina, as well as other top executives in Chicago. Through her work, she actually specializes in executive development, team transformations, and confidence and courage workshops, which are half-day and full-day workshops that she provides. But really what I think it's about is her passion to see people find their courage, to understand their value and their worth, and to make sure that they are striving to their highest purpose in their work and in their career lives, and in their personal lives as well. So it's really my honor to introduce to you Linda Davis.
I can be a Sark. Now my whole house is great. I can do anything good. I like my school. I like anything. I like my dad. I like my cousins. I like my aunts. I like my Allisons. I like my moms. I like my sisters. I like my dad. I like my hair. I like my haircuts. I like my pajamas. I like my stuff. I like my rooms. I like my whole house. My whole house is great. I can do anything good. Yeah. I can do anything good. Better than anyone. Better than anyone.
Oh, if we could only bottle that up and take it home with us. It is my great privilege and honor to be here to bring it all home for you and to watch you take what you have learned from these amazing, inspiring women and make it real for you. My desire is that you would walk away today knowing just how capable, how valuable, and how loved you are. And you can be free to step out and be bold and courageous in everything that you do, in how you lead your life, in how you lead in relationships with your team, or how you take up a cause that deeply touches your heart, like so many of the women we heard, and particularly Betty Ann Waters yesterday. My prayer is that each woman here will walk away with greater confidence in your identity, in your who, and be more courageous in walking out one risky next step that is in line with what you're uniquely called to do. Actually, there's no telling what the leaders in this room might release if you knew your incredible worth, your incredible value, and you personally applied what you've learned from this conference. How will you work to affect change in your community? How will you find ways to support an important, compelling cause, like Amy Ziering and the women in the hunting ground have so courageously done? With all of your insights from the past 2 days, and I know it's overwhelming, what is one action step that you can take to build your confidence and courage in your leadership, in all parts of your life? So we're going to look at what is confidence, what is courage. We'll look at why do we need it, and why do we need it especially as women? Where does it actually come from? What does it look like when we're confident, and how do we get more of it? So confidence, the Webster definition of confidence is belief in the powers, trustworthiness, or reliability of a person. And when we look at what courage is, it's a little bit different. Courage is a resistance to fear. We have fears. They present themselves all the time in our lives, but we have strength in the face of danger or difficulty. We're willing to take action and do it afraid. And the picture I get in my mind when I think about courage is the Cowardly Lion. And I love to say, courage, courage. And he had plenty of fears. He was full of fear. And he took action anyway when he joined Dorothy and the others on the way to Oz. So what does confidence actually sound like? Let's think about this for a second. A couple of things that I've heard recently that sound like confident women are, I wouldn't worry about it. Go for it. You know, doing it this way works for me. Or, one of my personal favorites, no, I can't. Or maybe somebody speaks and says, I need to say something. Tell me more. Can you help me? Why not me? I think I really like that one. Why not me? Because we all have what it takes in this room. And it's interesting, one of my clients recently shared with me that the greatest benefit that she got from this conference last year was that she decided she was going to go for it. And what she told me that she went for as a result of being here with all of you amazing women and all the incredible speakers is she started speaking up more in meetings. She said that she actually went and applied for a job that she wasn't really qualified for. And she has become a great advocate for other women. Now that's a success story for a woman that said, I'm going to go for it. So why do we need confidence? Why do we need this? What is it about confident people? Confident people are admired. Confident people are listened to. They have status. They have influence. And they have power. And confident women and men have a stronger ability to lead. Others want to follow confident people. This is true even though they are not necessarily more knowledgeable or more capable? And that's where we get to this slide that says, success is less about our competence and much more about our confidence. But where do we tend to focus as women? We focus on our competence. We look at that when really success in life is much more about our confidence. When we're not confident, we don't pursue new opportunities. What holds us back is actually deciding not to try, not to go for it. Confidence is a belief in one's ability to succeed. Our belief about what we're capable of influences our action. We do what we believe. Are we believing for things that we can't see yet? Taking action, actually taking action, boosts our confidence. Confidence increases through our hard work and commitment with both our successes and our failures. So why do we need confidence, especially as women? Why did I make that comment about why do we need confidence? So the truth is that our studies show that something changes in our confidence level in our teenage years. Relative to boys, our confidence is going along, like Jessica, at a rich, vibrant rate, and then something happens when we hit the teenage years. So somewhere between 8 and 15 or 16, typically girls lose confidence relative to boys. There's something that happens at that time in our life, and I would wager we never get caught back up. We never get caught back up relative to boys or to men. Some of the evidence of that is typically women or girls will predict they do worse on tests than they actually do. We underestimate our abilities consistently. We don't consider we're ready for a promotion when we are more than ready. Some of the fun facts about confidence relative to men are, and this one came from an HP study actually, the fact is that men will apply for a job, whether it's a first job or a promotion or whatever, when they have 60% of the job requirements. They figure, I'll learn it, I'll delegate it, I'll figure it out. Women only apply for jobs when they have 100% of the job requirements. Wow. So, what does that mean? Can you get a job you didn't apply for? Not really. You got to go for it. You have to apply for a job to actually get it. Another one that was startling to me is that 57% of men will negotiate their first salary for a job out of school. 7% of women will negotiate for their salary for their first job out of school. 57% will negotiate, 7% of women will negotiate for their salary for their first job. Now, when I read that, I laughed. I said, it wouldn't have occurred to me to negotiate my first job out of school. It just wouldn't have occurred to me to say, no, I'd like more than $12,000, thank you. It wouldn't have occurred to me on my first job, my second job, my third job. It just wouldn't have occurred to me. And we're not talking about a difference in capability. We're just talking about a difference in confidence. Startling. And how we look at failure. How we look at failure. So boys and girls are different in terms of how we look at a failure. And if I had a counterpart up here, and we were both in a class, a male counterpart, and we were taking a course together, and we both failed the test, we would look at that differently. A man would say, more typically, I failed the test. You know, I really didn't like that teacher. I didn't think the book was very good. And there might be several other external reasons for that failure. More typically, men will externalize a failure, and they'll get over it quickly. If I fail that test, what am I going to say? I'm a failure. I'm a failure. I'm going to internalize that and say I'm the problem, not something out here. It's just a tendency and a way of looking at failure that's different for us as women. Girls and women will fixate and ruminate on our performance. We'll think about it, we'll lie awake, I wish I could have done this, I should have done that. The woulda, shoulda, couldas come in. We'll fixate on what we can do at work, at school, as parents, as wives, physically, and in many other ways. We strive for perfection. We strive to be perfect. And men typically don't ruminate or process what didn't go well. They move right on to the next thing. And very rarely do men struggle with perfectionism in the same way that we do. And I can tell you from having to share this message with others, it's been very convicting to me that in doing presentations or working on workshops, whether it's with a team or a confidence workshop like this, I invariably am staying up late at night, looking at the slides, making sure there's no typo, rehearsing what I'm going to say over and over and over, and then as soon as it's over, I think about what I should have done, what I could have done, what I left out, I wish I'd said. I do that less. I do that less. And I like to just say no to that word perfect. I think it's a burden. I think we should let that go. And I've even encouraged when I hear people say, that was perfect, I say, I prefer you said it was excellent. I want to be a woman of excellence. I don't want to be a woman who works to be perfect, because it's impossible. And it's a very poor goal. It really sets us up for lots of health problems and all kinds of issues. So let's be women of excellence instead of getting caught up in perfectionism. So do you believe you aren't good enough? And do you constantly replay the tape of a negative event from the past? Do you get stuck in the same place that I've been stuck? This can cause us to not move forward for fear of that thing happening again. So we stay stuck and we don't move forward. Another personal favorite of mine that's come up recently is the I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And I have to tell you that I heard 3 I'm sorries yesterday in a place that it was totally unnecessary. So somebody stepping into somebody else's space, or just standing in a line and saying, I'm sorry, or simply asking for what is appropriate, saying, I'm sorry before you ask for something that you need, qualifying that. And then the one that was almost the most painful for me to hear, that I actually heard yesterday, was saying, I'm sorry before sharing a proud moment. Wow. Why would we want to discount that? Why would we want to discount that? In fact, I even had, and I told Emily this, in my notes, I had decided to start my presentation by saying that I didn't have a book and I don't have a movie. And I'm not really qualified to be here. And then I thought, wait a minute. Am I confident in this message and confident in my ability to deliver it or not? So I took that out, but now I've shared it with you anyway. But it was that process of just thinking, that was my natural tendency. It's like saying, I'm sorry before I share something I'm proud of, or ask for something I need that's completely appropriate. So we want to say, I'm sorry less. I've also heard over the last 12 months, 3 of the senior male executives that I work with, this is so interesting that they brought this up, they said, I've had to stop one of my female staff members from saying I'm sorry in a meeting or in a conversation about something. And the fact that 3 men in 1 year have told me about a woman on their staff who said I'm sorry and that they had to stop them, I thought, wow, how many times is this actually happening? Those are just the ones I get to hear about. So we don't want to be women of I'm sorry. We don't want to land in that place. I think it's appropriate to say I'm sorry when we're truly asking for forgiveness. But that's a rare moment, and that's a different thing than just a drive-by I'm sorry. I had a friend just last week who shared a great example of how she has taken "I'm sorry" out of her normal language. And she talked about coming to a dinner where she was coming late for whatever reason. And she said, I've decided, instead of making, a big deal and entering with the negative, entering with the "I'm sorry" negative, she said, I'm just going to say, if I arrive, thank you for waiting for me. I thought that was awesome. I thought, I'm going to share that and I'm going to use that. And hopefully not be late too often. That's not very respectful. But to start with, thank you for waiting for me. What a nice, positive way to enter, rather than all that shame or all that "I'm sorry" and leading with that. That's a confident woman entering into that situation. Another one is pausing before we say yes too quickly. So, yes, I will work late tonight. Yes, I'll cover for you. Yes, I'll do that extra project that nobody else wants to do. We say yes too quickly, and it's in order to please other people. Or at least that's my confession about saying yes too quickly. So about 3 years ago, I was asked to step in to be president of our homeowners association. And I was sitting in a meeting, and several women there, said things to me like, "You'd be really good at this." They said, "We need you to do this." And I said yes. And I didn't think about it. I didn't pause. I responded to that opportunity to please others. And I can tell you, those have been 3 very painful years for me. Very. I was in a role that was so inappropriate for my gifts. I had to be the police cop, and it just was, I thought it was all about the team and working together. No. And that was very, very painful for me. Recently, I just got freed up from that, and it was a poor decision for me. It was a poor decision, and I didn't, stop to think about, does this align with what I'm passionate about? Does this align with my skills and gifts? Does this align with, what I want to be part of? And if I had taken that moment and just said no, I'd probably be a little healthier today and probably have more opportunities in my work life. Just because I could take that on didn't mean I should take that on. I said yes for the wrong reasons. As women, we want to say no more often and not feel the need to explain. It's interesting that men in senior leadership positions, and this applies to women in senior leadership positions as well, might mistake us saying "I'm sorry" too much, or saying yes too frequently, or not taking action on something that might be risky. They might perceive that as weakness. They might perceive that as weakness and believe that we're not as qualified to lead. This can result in women being promoted less frequently than men. And so just to say no when we need to say no, and let those "I'm sorry's" go. There's nothing to be sorry about. You're wonderful and capable. No need to apologize for just being there. So when we think about confidence, where does this come from? Confidence is an internal thing. It's deep inside us. And this is a perspective about fathers and dads. And from a traditional role perspective, and I know this is from a traditional role perspective, our dads are expected to be the providers and the protectors, and they're also expected to be the ones that call out our identity, call out our uniqueness, have our back. And I had the privilege of meeting with Tracy's dad, Cecil Andrus, yesterday, and I'm just so curious, having met her and then met him. I asked him, I said, what have you done as a dad to pour into the value, identity, self-worth of your daughters? What have you done uniquely? Because I could tell he had had a big part to play, and he was happy to talk to me about that. And so was Tracy, happy to share with what he had done. And he said, I am always available for them, I was when they were little. I'm available now. He even gave me this picture that made me cry of that his daughters, Tracy being the middle of the three, jump up into his lap. Now. As adults, I thought, wow, I want to get me some of that fathering, boy. Physically, emotionally, and mentally, he's always available for them. That has blessed them. It has changed the course of their lives to have such a great dad. And how cool that we get to be here as part of the Andrus Center for Public Policy and rub shoulders with Cecil Andrus and Tracy. So, fathers can also build up confidence in their daughters by affirming them as women, affirming them as girls. And sometimes that even means talking about how attractive they are, and that they look so pretty, or going out on a date with them. This isn't an easy area for fathers, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I've gone through in these confidence workshops that I do for half a day or a full day, and I've interviewed women and said to them, what is it that your dad has done or said to build up your confidence, to make you feel like you've got what it takes? And a few of the things they said is, they quoted dads, you have so many special qualities. And there's something about hearing that from a dad that really impacts. You can do anything you put your mind to. I believe in you, so you can believe in you. I love being with you. That was from a friend of mine whose dad is in a nursing home, kind of at the tail end of his life. And she heard those words at 58 years old. She had never heard that from her dad, but it still made such a difference, even though he was in his late 80s and she's in her late 50s. Dads affirm their daughters' effort toward improvement, risk-taking, and perseverance. Now, the moms are not left out of this, and it is very important what a mom does to build us up. Moms are encouragers, cheerleaders, they're nurturers, comforters. And one of the things that I've realized in sharing this message and talking to so many women is the greatest thing a mom can do for her daughter is to model being confident. That is the greatest gift that a mom can give to her daughter, and say, I'm confident in who I am, so you can be. You can go for it, just like I have. So that's important for most of you who are moms in here, that you're a model. And this is true for women that you might be mentoring or younger women in your organization. You model confidence for them, and that's the greatest gift that you can give to them. So as girls, as women, we need to believe that we're loved, that we're beautiful, and that we're capable of great success. So I'll tell you a little story about my dad. My dad passed away 18 months ago. He was very proud of me. He used to brag on a lot of my more masculine qualities. He used to brag on my sports ability. He used to brag on my ability to lead in business in a mostly male environment. He had my back, and he would use the word, I'm proud of you, Lenny. I'm proud of you. And I miss that. I miss that, having my dad. I did never jump up into his lap, I'll have to say. I was blessed. I had an above-average dad. There's no question. But sometimes, as I mentioned earlier, dads just don't know what to do with daughters. They just don't know what to do. Let your mother take care of that. I've all of my life since I was younger, I've been very insecure about my looks. And I know this is not an unusual thing, but I've always not wanted my picture taken, always feeling very insecure about weight or whatever it was, insecure about my looks. And recently, I just had the revelation that growing up, my dad had never said to me, you know, you look so pretty in that dress, or you look beautiful today. He never said anything about some of the feminine parts of me. And I went through a process just quietly between me and God, and I forgave my dad for never saying I was beautiful. Well, what happened after that? And he was gone, so this was just a quiet conversation in a quiet moment. And I released him. He didn't owe me anything because he had been a good dad in other ways, and this was just one of those areas he fell short. But what happened after I did that is so overwhelming to me that I hope I can get through this. But everywhere I went, after doing that one evening, everywhere I went for 2 weeks, I went to coffee shops, I was in the grocery store, I was out on a hike with a friend, and person after person said to me or stopped me in the middle of something and said, "Linda, you look so beautiful. You're beautiful. I don't want to listen to what you're saying. I want you to hear what I'm saying." And you know, this is especially intriguing because at the time that this happened, I did not have a hair on my head. I was a bold woman, literally, a bold and bald woman. I have lost my hair through stressful life-related events, and the fact that just all of a sudden this happened was powerful. It was powerful. It changed me forever to be able to experience that, like more than I could even imagine. The process of forgiving released so much more than I could have hoped or imagined. I am now more confident in how I look as a result. Thank you. You don't have words for those kinds of things. So speaking of fathers, Sara Blakely has a great story. Do people know who Sara Blakely is? Oh, not so much. Okay, Sara Blakely is the youngest female self-made billionaire in this country. She is the founder of Spanx, and in support of Sara Blakely, I'm actually sporting some Spanx as we speak. But what makes her story compelling is that she credits her dad with her success. Whether you read this Forbes magazine article or you see her in an interview on TV, she credits her dad for her success. And he says, "My dad is the reason I'm successful because he taught me how to fail. He taught me as a teenager how to fail." He would say to her every night at the dinner table, "Sara, what did you fail at today? What did you go for? What did you risk that didn't work?" And if she didn't have something to report, he'd be greatly disappointed. Because failure was not the outcome. Failure was actually not trying, not stretching herself, not going for it. She gave some examples about trying out for the cheerleaders and not making it, and that, you know, she wanted to come home and have something for her dad because he was going to be pleased if she tried and failed. And what I'm picturing is that he was, you know, he said, "That's great, Sara, terrific. What'd you learn from that? How will you keep going? What did you learn and how will you keep going?" So he encouraged her as a young woman how to fail and how to do it well. Sara failed to get into law school twice. She sold fax machines for 7 years with moderate success before she got the wild idea to cut up a pair of control-top pantyhose and turn them into Spanx. And she had several products that failed before she got the company launched. But that's an amazing story. Psychologists agree that dads play the most powerful role in speaking into and shaping the image and identity of who we are. Over anybody else, they remind us that we're capable and lovely as women and that we've got what it takes. Sara's dad taught her to fail up. I like that expression, to fail up. So to get something from it and keep going, but it's up, it's not down. He believed in her, he cheered her on to learn and grow, and she had his blessing to go out there and take risks and just try it. What's the worst that can happen? She was truly blessed, and I know that many of you haven't experienced what I've experienced or what Tracy's experienced, or what Sara Blakely has experienced. You may feel like you never got a blessing from a dad. Counselors' offices are filled with people, men and women, wishing they'd heard "great job" just once in their lives from their dad. Sarah's dad had her back and built up her confidence in her capability. If she hadn't been comfortable with failure, she never would have started Spanx and never gotten to where she is. So let's talk about failure. Most of us fear failing. We fear failing. We want to avoid failing. We fear making a mistake. We fear not meeting expectations. We fear being criticized or rejected, or even that potential of not measuring up. This really gets in the way of us being confident. It keeps us from real growth and real freedom. Do you see failure as an opportunity to learn and build confidence? I'm going to tell you a little story about being in business school in New England. And I was probably in my late 20s, early 30s. And the professor who was teaching career management, or maybe it was a marketing class actually, he said something that really stuck with me back then. He said, you know, if you never get fired in your career, you haven't had a successful career. I was like, what? That's the very thing I'm looking to avoid, getting fired. But I get that now. I get that now. If you've never risked, if you haven't gone for it, taken a chance, and potentially been fired, we've missed out on something. So that failure of being fired, at that time, I was like, this guy's just not a good professor sharing that kind of information. I'm not buying into that, but I get it now. I get why he said that. I wish I had gotten it and been able to internalize it in the way he meant it. And let's think about failure for a second. One of the things that I like to do in kind of getting my arms around this idea of failure is to think about, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? What's the worst thing that can happen? I get fired, I lose my job, I have to reduce what I spend money on. Well, eventually maybe I'll lose my house, and before you know it, I'm homeless and under a bridge, and I can go all the way to the catastrophe of the failure. And I think it's good to do that, because we're you know, you have to end up kind of laughing when you think about all the worst case scenarios. And I appreciated yesterday that Lynn was talking about, you know, being workforce reduced and having that, not being prepared for that, not having the resilience for that. But in the end, it turned into a really positive experience for her. It launched her into a completely new adventure. And she was able to embrace that and take advantage of it and go and take 1.5 years in Europe. And the whole trajectory of her life changed as a result of taking advantage of that failure and moving forward. So in order to get comfortable with this concept myself, in addition to trying to let go of typos and not worry about every single word that I say, I've become comfortable with the idea of asking for feedback. So when I have an executive coaching engagement, or I do a team event or a confidence workshop, again, because I'm teaching on this, I have to walk my talk. And so I always ask for feedback. And I'm going to encourage you to become a great proponent of feedback. So I ask for feedback, both the positive and the negative. And I ask for feedback. Give me 2 specific things that I did well. 2 specific things you liked. And at a conversation like this, that's going to be extremely valuable to me. 2 things that you really liked about what I shared, and one that would have made it better. That's kind of like a mini failure. A mini negative, a little mini failure, and I'm going to learn from both. I'm going to learn from what went well, what you liked about this conversation, and what not so much. I wish you had done whatever. A little less of this, a little more of that. I wish you'd covered this question. So I look at negative feedback, or what I could have done better, as like a mini failure, but an opportunity for me to learn and grow. And by the way, you guys are all asked to do feedback, as Tracy reminded you, and I would be so grateful, so appreciative, if you would fill out on that little card and send it back to the organizing team on 2 things you liked about what I said and 1 thing that would have made it better. And be as specific and honest about that as you possibly can. So I appreciate getting feedback. And it's important for us to remember that we need that positive feedback. We tend to think of feedback as negative. Like, I don't really want to get feedback. I really don't want to give feedback. And the truth of the matter is, this is interesting. What do you hear if I'm giving you 2 things that went well and 1 thing that you could improve on? What are you hearing? The one. In fact, studies show that you really have to share 3 or more positive things before somebody will hear the good. Well, let's just exercise that muscle and make sure we're asking for 2 things I did well and 1 thing that I could have made better. We want to be women that get good feedback so we can learn and grow, and we want to be leaders that give good feedback so people can learn and grow. And I make this a practice in everything I do to get feedback. And ow, like sometimes the negative hurts, ow. But I just look at it and say, but look at all the good stuff. And how do I make it better next time? So I can leverage what's good and maybe change up some of the things not so good. All right. Speaking of feedback and having someone back you up, let's look at the idea of corporate sponsorship for women. A sponsor is like a supersonic mentor. A sponsor is someone who has your back. And now we're thinking more in the professional world. Somebody that advocates for you, brags on you when you're not even in the room. It's kind of like a corporate dad or a corporate mom. There are companies that offer sponsorship programs to high potential women. And here's the reasons that they do. A woman with a sponsor is 25% more likely to speak up and ask for a raise. She's 52% more likely to pursue a promotion or advancement. And the one that really matters to companies is a woman with a sponsor is 58% less likely to leave the organization within 1 year. And this is important for businesses. A lot of organizations have lost their top talent women. They go off to a place where they're going to be supported more in their leadership. So companies that want to invest in their top talent women might be thinking about doing a sponsorship type of program. And interestingly enough, what I found in participating and coaching some women in these programs to how do you get the most out of your sponsor, which is not an easy thing for us to figure out. So I was a coach in helping them do that. But often those sponsors are men. Not always, but often. And there's 2 reasons for that. One that we all know about, which is that that's who's in those senior level positions. But the other reason that bothers me a little bit more, actually it makes me really sad, is the fact that the women in those senior level positions often don't have enough confidence in themselves to share it. That breaks my heart. That breaks my heart, that they don't feel, they might even feel like a fraud, like they don't deserve to be here. It's amazing when prime ministers and senior level women are interviewed, sometimes they don't feel like they even deserve to be there. They're not confident in what they have and why they got there. Well, that makes me sad, and we have an opportunity to change that. So some companies offer this opportunity to women, and my company's recently launched a new program called Women in Leadership Launch, and the acronym is WILL. And I'm happy to share more about that if anybody's interested. But the point of this is whatever the case for you in your organization, you don't want to go it alone. You got to have people that have your back. You got to have a team that's for you and looking out for you and encouraging you. Not only is it good for you to have a sponsor and pursue advancement, but it's also really good for business and the bottom line. And Lisa Matz talked about this yesterday morning, and Lynn talked about it in her breakout about resilience. The data is clear about women in top management positions. An increase in share of women from 0 to 30% is associated with a 15% increase in profitability, or whatever your metric of success would be. That's significant. 22,000 companies were interviewed and asked for that. And as several have mentioned, the report says that a single woman at the top does not directly lead to more profits. The study shows that at least 3 women, or that 30% number, need to be present for their voices to be heard. To really change the dynamics, you need to have a critical mass of women. So they talk about 3 or 30%. So 1 is not enough to actually change the bottom line. But the point of this is women at the top is good for the bottom line. It's good for the bottom line. This is good for business. This isn't at the point of a nice to have. This is critical for organizations to be competitive and successful. And as many of you know, it's not easy for women to move up in the organization. There are double standards out there. There are challenges for us. But as we become more confident in who we are and what we have to offer, it gets easier. And I'll tell you a little story about being at HP 20 years ago. I was the only woman on a senior leadership sales team. And I had taken on some of the causes of diversity, both in terms of recruiting and training. I had put together some ideas for part-time work for women and some other employee programs that were creative and supportive of engaging women. Most of our workforce was men, and certainly all of the staff except for me were men. And I got nowhere with trying to advocate for these programs. And it turned out my boss did not have daughters. He had sons, and so that wasn't working for me in that angle. And I kept trying and trying to get these things that were really important to me, that I thought were the right thing to do. I kept trying to get these programs through. And one day, one of my peers on the staff stopped me because he was watching me struggle and get nowhere. And he said, "Linda, why do you care so much about this?" And then he said the key question. He said, "What's in it for you?" I didn't even get the question. What's in it for me? This is the right thing to do for the organization. What's in it for me? I didn't get it. But then I did get it. And I got the fact I need to figure out what was in it for my boss to put part-time work for women in place, to recruit people of color and put in programs to support them, to get a management team to understand the power of diversity. What was in it for him? I hadn't even thought of that. I had no idea to think about what's in it for him. Why would he care about this when, it wasn't naturally something he cared about? That was so eye-opening for me. And the learning for that was, it didn't really matter what that was. It just happened that he wanted to look better than his peer across the country. And it wasn't my place to judge that. It was my place to support that and figure out how investing in diversity programs and recruitment and part-time work for women and other things that supported a diverse workforce were going to be good for him. The minute I gave him national visibility for this, we got speakers in, I said, he wants to go to bat for this, everything happened instantly. I needed to find out what was in it for him to do these things that were important to me. And this is something I see with my female leadership clients, that women often are thinking horizontally. We're thinking about what's the greatest good for the greatest number. We're thinking across and down a little bit more, and we have to just pay attention. It doesn't matter whether our boss is a woman or a man. What's important to that boss? How can I align what I care about with what they care about? And kind of, it's like managing up. I say we all need to be managing down, we need to manage across, we need to manage up. So that was a painful learning for me. It took years for me I wish somebody had told me this, that you got to figure out what's important to your boss, instead of letting me flail around and waste a lot of time and not get things in place that really needed to happen. So we've talked about what confidence is, why we need it. a little bit about where it comes from. Now let's explore what it looks like. Whoops. Oh, there she is. It's interesting that the number one thing that people request from an executive coach these days is help with executive presence. Executive presence. And simply put, executive presence is how we communicate a message, how we're able to effectively deliver our message. That includes some listening skills and how we present. But it's also something called gravitas, which is grace under fire. When it doesn't go well, how do you shore up? How do you handle yourself when there's fire coming your way? That and communication is what makes up executive presence. And I'm curious to know, how many of you seen Amy Cuddy's TED Talk? So a good percentage, maybe a third of us have seen Amy Cuddy's TED Talk. Well, I'm going to recommend that to all of you. Amy Cuddy, her last name is Cuddy. It's the second most popular TED Talk of all time, and I should know what the first one is, but I don't. But it's the number 2 most popular TED Talk, and it's about body language, or our nonverbals. And Amy Cuddy looks at, it's a wonderful video, and in a full-on workshop we would show it. It shows the difference between a high-power body language, and I love this. These are things like eye contact, which we know about. It's about making big gestures, right? So kind of taking up space. You might notice sometimes people that take up space at a table or in a meeting. It's about spreading out. It's about using your voice, hopefully low and slow. Our voices kind of indicate our power. It's not just our words, it's what our body's doing. And you know, this kind of what she's doing, that's a high power pose right there. So what's the opposite of that? Low power poses, okay? That's hunching over, not sitting up straight, you know, kind of like the fig leaf cover up. Or it could be like if you're touching your neck, that's the ultimate low power, low confidence pose, like that. Shutting down your body, not being open. So that's a low power pose. And that kind of position, either a high power pose or a low power pose, affects you. It affects the people around you. They say, wow, that, like Emily, meeting Emily, I said, that's a confident woman. She quickly said yes to coming up and introducing me. She was confident, and I knew it right away. But I knew it mostly viscerally from her body language, how she carried herself. And I said, this is a confident woman. That gives off that signal. The interesting thing about our body language is it tells us, it gives us an impression, you know, or others an impression of how confident we are. But if you actually hold a high power pose yourself, it changes you. It changes you, and this is how it does it. When you hold a high power pose like this, or what you can see on the banners up here, for 2 minutes, your testosterone goes up, so that's your go for it hormone, and your cortisol goes down. That's your stress hormone. So just 2 minutes holding a power pose, expanding your body, taking up space, not only changes and gives people around you an impression of you, it actually changes you. And listen to some of these facts. So a positive body language actually changes your attitude. It makes you more likable to other people. It conveys your competence because you're showing your confidence. It's a powerful tool in negotiations of any kind, even virtually, and it improves your emotional intelligence. Wow, okay, well this is a benefit. So it's an opportunity, and we're going to have this opportunity, to practice before you go into an interview, before you go into a difficult conversation with your boss, or a tough conversation with a family member or a friend, or a slightly stressful event like coming up and speaking to 700 women. You can be sure I've been power posing all week getting ready for this moment. All right, we're going to practice this together. We're going to do it for 2 minutes. I know you guys can do this. So you have on your bookmark some samples of some power poses. You see them on the banners, this, and I want you to stand up. We're all going to stand up and do this. Superheroes. All right, I want you to, and we're going to do it for 2 minutes. It's going to seem like a long time, but it'll be worth it. Everybody pick a pose. Pick a pose. All right. Stay in it. You guys look great. Oh, this should be a picture. You guys look so great. Nice. Everybody, men and women. Yeah. Terrific. You got a whole nother minute. Stay with it, girl. You guys look so good. Yes. Woohoo! Hang in there. Keep it. Takes 2 minutes to make a change. Oh, you guys look so good. All right, nicely done. Nicely done. Woo! Woo! Okay, how do you feel? How do you feel? Good. Don't you feel good? 2 minutes. Okay, the good news here is you can do this in the ladies' room. Emily told me a story about doing it in the ladies' room, and her hands were above the stall and her feet were below and they were exposed, and she didn't care. I need a little power. 2 minutes in the ladies' room, in your car, doesn't matter. Just take 2 minutes and get a power pose going. For anything where you need a little boost in your confidence, because it actually changes us. You guys could go out and conquer the world right now. 2 minutes in a power pose. Awesome. That was fantastic. And I had several fun success stories of people doing power poses, and I'm going to ask you about yours too in a minute. But one woman, a young woman, 20 years old, who was in one of the workshops I did, the next day after being in the workshop, she applied for a job that she did not have the qualifications for, and she did a power pose before the interview, and she got the job. Like, this works. This works. So in addition to power poses, let's see what else you can do to build up your confidence and your courage. So everybody at their place should have a bookmark that you just took a look at. So we want to get more confidence so we can courageously lead in all the areas of our life. And we've talked a lot about preparation. That's the first thing on this card. Put that on there. Letting go of past mistakes and negative thinking. Maybe there's somebody you need to forgive. Maybe the person that you need to forgive is you. Just as a reminder on that. But then the next step is making a positive plan. Positive plan. Okay. The first thing about that is, what do you want? I find that for many women that this is sometimes the hardest part. Figuring out, what do you want? Do you want to work less? Do you want to work more? Do you want to move up? Do you want to start your own thing? Do you want to go out and get behind a cause that you believe in? What do you want? What do you want in your life? So this is the first step. What is something that I want, that I care about? And it could be in any dynamic of your life, any part of it. So what do you want? And think about, it related to this, what are you good at? Usually what we're good at and what we want get connected. I advise that. I don't advise going and being an HOA president. I advise doing what you're good at. And I didn't ever want that. So thinking about what you want, what you're good at, So you're in that situation. What are you going to say? What are you going to say? What are you going to say or do? And how does what you're going to say align with what other people care about? And this is a good thing to do before the meeting happens. Think about, why will they care about what I care about? What's in it for them? Don't make the mistake I made in terms of not even, just ignoring, trying to convince them that they should care about what I cared about, instead of figuring out how what I cared about aligned with what they cared about. So figure out what's important to other people. And then you've got the power and presence, and I say practice, 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 especially if it's something very important to you. You might want to just write down some notes and actually say it out loud. And I can tell you the Riverside Hotel heard this presentation several times this morning. Say it out loud. It just helps. It just helps. We let go of some of the extra words. We just get a little better. We get more confident. So practice it out loud. And then do a power pose. Got to do the power pose. 2 minutes in your car, in the ladies' room. It doesn't matter. And then it's up to you to perform, to stop thinking about it and just do it. Take action. Take action. Take a step. And while you're taking that step, or before you take that step, potentially, you want to think to yourself, you know what? Who's got my back? Who's got my back? Who's for me? Who are my supporters in this meeting that maybe I could connect with before the meeting, that are for me, that are here to support me? Maybe it's people that'll give you some feedback. Maybe you're bold enough to say, you know what, I want to know what I did really well in that presentation or in that conversation or whatever it was, and maybe one thing I could have done better. But I want you to be there to give me that feedback as well. So the feedback is valuable, as we said, both the positive, at least 2 to 1, and the opportunity to learn from the things that didn't go so well. And then the last bullet on that bookmark is about perseverance. It's about perseverance. It's what Sara Blakely did. She kept going. She applied for cheerleading. She sold fax machines. She applied to law school. She had a bunch of bomb products at Spanx before the company really launched. She kept going. She took the next step after the first step, and she kept going, and she persevered. So now it's your turn. It's time for you to take action. You guys all have on your table a sheet, a handout. All right. So this is the time, this is the place. You've gathered tremendous insights and inspirations from the women who have spoken here. And I want you to sit here while we're all together, and I want you to fill out this sheet. So grab a pen. I want you to take a look, and I want you to think about, and we're going to spend a few minutes on this because it's important. It's important. What is one thing that you want that you don't have right now? What's something that you want? And it could be on your personal life, it could be in your professional life. What's one thing that's going to require some action on your part that you want? And write it down. It could be as a leader or for a new direction or a dream that you have that's been put on the shelf. There's power in thinking about it, and there's power in writing it down. All right, and the next part 2 is what's one thing that you can do? What's one next step that you can take toward that thing that you want? And people have come up with some amazing things, like somebody who wanted to work part-time. And her first step was to schedule time on her boss's calendar to have that conversation. That was her first step, where she was going to ask to work part-time. People may have a difficult conversation with a family member, and it may be just thinking through what you want to say, what you want to ask, what you want to do. And what would be that one next step toward that thing that you care about, that you desire, that you don't have today? Just one. Could be calling up and exploring courses that are available at BSU. It could be networking with somebody who's started their own business and you want to learn more about that. You want to get together with them for coffee. So I'm going to follow up on the person I met last night at the networking. And I'm going to get together and ask them questions about what it's like to start their own business. One next step. So write that down, and you can circle your favorite power pose. That's the third step. So plan which power pose you like. You can mix it up. I had somebody one time talk about Saturday Night Live and the girl that does superstar. If you like that one, we don't have the superstar. That's good. So pick a power pose that you're going to use before you take that step, especially if it's a little risky and you need a little boost of confidence. So then you're going to act. You're going to take that step in the fourth box. And I put this down purposefully. There's a little time marker there. Some people like a deadline. Some people need a deadline. So put down, is it going to be this afternoon? Is it going to be later this week, this weekend, next week? When are you going to do this? When are you going to do the one next step? And sometimes number 5 is the hardest. Most of the time when I'm talking with women and with men too, who's got your back? Who's for you? Who's saying, you go girl, you've got everything you need. I'm on your team. I'm with you. Who's going to be for you? And this can be all kinds of people in our lives. But you need to have people on your team. Who's rooting for you? And it might be a different person who might offer you feedback in some settings where it's a public thing, not just a one-on-one meeting. But who might give you some feedback on what are 2 things that you do so wonderfully in an event, in a moment, in a conversation. 2 things that you could do well, and then maybe when you're ready, 1 thing that you can improve on. Don't ask for it other than 2 to 1. We want to hear the good stuff. We need to hear the good stuff. We need to be encouraged in what we've done well. We need to have people calling out the gold in us. And the last is just an encouragement to keep going. Keep going on this path. And think about, after you take that one next step, and maybe you get some feedback, maybe you have somebody that's got your back, what's the next thing you're going to do? What's the next law school you're going to apply to? What's the next, fax machines you're going to sell? What's that next thing that you're going to do? And it could be risky. And you think about just like taking one step to get closer to what you care about. So has everybody been able to fill that out? Raise your hand if you've been able to fill that out all the way through. You guys are good. So obedient. So obedient. Wow. I'm honored. I'm honored. And the bottom part of number 6 says, who are you going to share this with? Who are you going to share this with? Is it a daughter? Is it somebody you're mentoring? Is it a woman that works in your organization who you think is really special and has got a lot going for them that you can pull along? Go ahead and call out the gold in them and share this idea with them. Through BSU, we're going to be following up with each of you, and I'm going to ask you, how did it go? How did it go? I really want to know. I want to stay in touch. I want to hear what happens. I want to hear that you got a job and you did a power pose and you never would have applied for it before. That would make me so happy to stay in touch and know what your successes have been and any failures that you're willing to share and say, it actually was kind of funny. This didn't work very well, but this is what I learned from it. This is how I'm going to make sure I keep going. I would love to stay connected via LinkedIn or have you follow me on Twitter. And I want you to really think about, who am I going to share this with? Who am I going to share this with? And in closing, I want to just talk about, where does our true significance come from? Where does our true significance come from as leaders and as women? It really is about intentionally adding value to others, especially other women, since we know that we all need it. We need people that have our back. We need women that have our back and model how confident they are. And the truth is, if we believe the best about others, we bring out the best in others. So what are you believing about yourself, and what are you believing about others? And how can you call out the best in them? How can you find the gold that's buried deep in there that maybe somebody else hasn't discovered, especially as a woman for women? We want to release positive words of life and hope everywhere we go. Everywhere we go. Just think about, how can I intentionally add value to this situation that I just walked into? What can I release? What kind of positive and hopeful things can I say in this situation? There were great accolades about this morning's situation, about saying, we got this. We can do this. Little flood, little loss of electricity, we can do this. And a team of women got together, and I'm sure men too, to make that happen, to turn it around and say, we can do this. We can do this together. The truth is that the one with the most confidence and the most hope has the most influence and the greatest ability to lead well. I thank you so much for hanging in today, and may God bless each of you richly.
Okay, so you notice we didn't have a traditional Q&A with Linda. However, she has committed to stay here until she has answered everyone and anyone's question. So we'll stick her in a corner anywhere around here, and you're welcome to come up when we conclude and ask her your questions. I want to thank St. Luke's Hospital for bringing Linda to us today, because we need our sponsors to do that. I also want to thank Peggy Elliott Goldwyn. Yeah, I've only known you for 5 years. Goldwyn, for bringing us Betty Ann Waters, because we also brought Betty Ann through the generosity of Peggy. I also, because we have a few minutes and these people are so important, normally, frankly, for a conference this size and to feed you as well as we do, the cost would be significantly more than it is. But it's through the generosity of people like 94.9 FM The River, Idaho Public Television, the Idaho Statesman, the City of Boise, the Family of Woman Film Festival, St. Luke's Hospital, AT&T, Blue Cross of Idaho, Bodybuilding.com, HP, Intermountain Gas, Simplot, the U.S. Forest Service, and I'm sorry, this is a new person, so they're going to get more support than anybody. MSI, which is, Meeting Systems. Oh my God, we wouldn't get here without Meeting Systems. They are the ones that got you all registered, and we really, really couldn't have done it without Meeting Systems. So I'm sorry I didn't recognize your logo, but you guys are great. Okay, so a few other things I want to talk to you about. We want to thank our speakers. We've had an awesome group of speakers. I want to thank Boise State University. I thought they were awesome before. Today, I am a major devotee. And our volunteers, again, we had over 100 volunteers who put this together and thousands of volunteer hours. We just couldn't do it without them. And finally, along the thanks, it's not the end of my things I need to tell you, but it's a rousing applause for those of you who came to join us, because your spirit this morning, you were an integral part of making this a little blip on the radar screen. Thank you so much. Okay, speaker evaluations. Our volunteers are going to have baskets out there. Please take those out there. And I can't ask you enough if you would just take a couple minutes to do the conference eval, because we read every one of those is read. And several of us read every one of those. So they're really, really important. You also, if you would drop your name bags in the books. Oh, we have more of the Gracious and Ruthless books. We found another box of those. They are out there. Please go by, for those of you who were not able to purchase them and do that before. Take your name tags and put them in the basket out there. And I wanted to ask people, and I didn't because we were trying to get right into it. How many of you are here for the first time this year? Wow. How many of you are going to go back to your companies and say, I want to go back next year and I want to bring 5 more people with me? Thank you. Thank you. So what you need to know is the date. Mark your calendars. Next year, September 13 and 14, right back here, and the lights will be on. Thank you very much.